In this video, I'm going to discuss how to explicate passages from a literary text, in this case, a short story. This is an important skill for Essay 1, or really any essay you're going to write in this class. For our purposes today, I'm going to use Battle Royal, which you've read, but this would apply for any short story that you're writing about. So to explicate means to unfold. That's really the same idea as unpacking or interpreting or analyzing key words in the quotation. So I'm going to be using those terms synonymously. Let's take a look at a quotation that I've pulled out from the short story. Remember, by the way, that Battle Royal is the first chapter of Ralph Ellison's longer autobiographical work, Invisible Man. We're treating this as a standalone short story. That's how the optional course anthology treats it, and that's what we have time for this semester. So when you pick a quotation from your text, you want to pick a quotation that's meaningful. And if you're reading something literary, this should be relatively easy to do. Something that's complex or that resonates for some reason or has thematic significance or uses a lot of figurative language. So you're looking for a really rich quote, a meaningful quote that you can really sink your teeth into. Before you include the quotation in your paragraphs, in your body paragraphs, you generally want to contextualize the quote. So in this case, for this quotation that you'll see here on one side of your screen, I would want to mention, if I were using this quote in my paragraph, that this particular quote occurs when the narrator has just gone through this brutal fight on an electrified rug. He's been scrambling for coins. Then he's finally able to deliver his speech as he has blood pouring out of his nose. And then he's given a scholarship and he feels overjoyed that he's been given the scholarship and he runs off the stage awkwardly. That's important context that helps us understand the quotation, so I would want to include that. You also want to make sure that you introduce the quotation. Remember, a quotation can never stand alone, so you have to introduce it with an independent clause or a complete sentence followed by a colon, or you could just include something short and simple like a tag, right? The narrator explains, comma, right? So you'd want to introduce the quotation. And then, of course, in your parenthetical citation, you would have a page number if there is a page number. Now we get to the good stuff, interpreting or unpacking the quotation. So you might look for figurative language. Do you see similes, metaphors, personification? What figurative language do you notice? Or even ambiguity. If words are used and they have multiple meanings and you think that's really important, you could discuss ambiguity. You might even look at syntax, the order of words or the construction of sentences, or even tone. These are just a couple of ideas that I'm thinking about as I zoom in on this quotation that I've chosen. And then, of course, when you're unpacking the quote, it always has to tie back to your topic sentence, that mini argument, that distinct argument of that particular body paragraph. And that should be connected back to your overall thesis, which is a debatable claim about the text. So this is the quote that I've chosen for my hypothetical paragraph. It's when the narrator says, "I was overjoyed. I did not even mind when I discovered the gold pieces I had scrambled for were brass pocket tokens advertising a certain make of automobile." At first, that might not seem like an incredibly meaningful quote, but once I zoom in, once I explicate a little bit, I can see that there's actually a lot to say. If I were writing a paragraph, I should be able to include a lot of analysis, and I should have more analysis than quotation itself. So I noticed the word token. That word token is really compelling. That's really interesting to me because token has multiple meanings, right? One is like a token that you might get at Chuck E. Cheese, right? It looks like a coin, but it doesn't really have any monetary value. But I also think of the concept of tokenism, right? And the story in some ways is about tokenism. It's tokenism is when some sort of company, or it could be an institution of some kind, will elevate, or sometimes in some cases hire someone in particular from an underrepresented group and say, hey, we don't have a problem here, right? So they use that person as sort of a token, but obviously that leads to all sorts of problems. So it's really a gesture that's ultimately empty or meaningless. So I wonder if that word token is being used intentionally. It also makes you think of something that looks like a coin. It looks like it has monetary value, but it doesn't. Remember earlier in the piece, one of the white men says, take this good, hard American cash, right? But it turns out to be kind of empty. So what's going on there? And also the fact that these tokens are advertising a car, a certain type of car, makes me think a lot about the idea of consumption, right? Maybe even the American dream. There's all these other references to the American dream and even the illusion of the American dream in the text. I also thought pocket token was kind of interesting. I looked up what a pocket token is, and pocket piece is a common expression for some sort of good luck charm that you would keep in your pocket. So that might be something that I would analyze there too. I might even look at the syntax, right? The beginning of the sentence, or the second part of that after the semicolon, has gold pieces, but then they're reduced to brass pocket tokens, right? And that kind of contrast between gold and how for a lot of us that seems to have almost inherent value versus brass. No offense to brass, but it's considered kind of a fake version of gold, or not as one that's not as expensive as gold. Even the word scrambled, that seems kind of obvious at first, but it's kind of interesting, right? Because to scramble means to crawl. Usually you use your hands if you're scrambling. It also suggests something kind of chaotic. And that's interesting too, right? That the men physically have to lower themselves onto the electrified rug to get these tokens that ultimately don't have monetary value, that are ultimately just an advertisement. There's still so much more we could unpack and analyze there, but just from pulling out a couple of key words and discussing them, I would have a really nice body paragraph, right? And obviously all of this would have to tie into some sort of topic sentence. Maybe I have other quotations in this paragraph. I probably don't have room for very many more, but maybe one more quotation if I wanted to, or one more example from the text about references to gold or bronze, or references to money, or references to tokenism that would then connect back to my topic sentence and to my thesis. So remember, for the essay, you really need to zoom in on the quotation. If you find that you try to do that and you have nothing to say about it, that probably is a sign that you ought to pick a new quotation, pick a quotation that's more compelling, because you should always have plenty to say about it. I hope that helps.